So
Yep.
for everybody online, we're going to record this session. There's quite a few people that expressed interest that couldn't make it. So just be aware of that if you're asking questions, etc. Over to you, Dave.
All right, I'm just going to turn on my webcam quickly so everyone can say hello and see me. Waiting. There we go. Everyone should be able to see me now on the screen. So my name's David. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. I'm a sales business development manager for eTool in Australia and New Zealand. I'm based in Melbourne, as opposed to everyone else who's in Perth, and there's someone else in Brazil, I think, on the line as well. I'll just run through a quick intro regarding the changes to the Green Star ratings and how it affects you guys as consultants and us at eTool as well. So the other voice you heard there was Richard. That's eTool's Group Leader of Services and Software, Richard Haynes. He'll go through all the technical specifics of the changes and how they affect LCA. We also have, as I said, Enrique on the line, who is our Commercial Technical Manager for eTool. He's based in Brazil, so he's up nice and late over there. And Gabby Shaw is in the Perth office with Rich, and she's our LCA expert. So they're here to help answer any questions that you may have regarding this webinar. So just a quick intro. So the GBCA obviously released new versions of the Green Star design and as built and Green Star interior rating tools, which are helping us all towards our common goal of a carbon positive environment. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, eTool we're leading in the space of life cycle impacts for the performance pathway in Green Star. We've completed and peer-reviewed over 50 LCA studies for Green Star certifications, and our eTool LCD software has over 40 consultant subscribers, most of them working on LCA for Green Star projects. Some of those consultants will be you guys on the webinar. We thought it was important to keep everyone informed of the recent changes and show how we are evolving our software to meet industry and LCA community demand. Just quickly, the key changes that are going to affect LCA are the minimum building requirements for greenhouse gas emissions for 5- and 6-star Green Star buildings. And there's a new materials pathway to incentivise the use of sustainably sourced structural timber. So Richard will break all these down in a bit more detail. Just a little bit of information. Projects are still able to register under version 1.1 for both Green Star Design and As Built and Green Star Interiors until 30th of September. And then it's going to all change over to v1.2. So that's it from me. I'll just pass it over to Rich, and I'll be on the line as well, listening to the whole thing. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for the introduction. So I think we'll get straight into it, and I'll do my best to explain my interpretation of things, or our interpretation of things. And look, if there's any questions along the way, please just type those in. It should be pretty straightforward how to do that. I've had a few people send me little messages already. Thanks for that. And we'll endeavour to answer those. So in terms of the agenda, what I'm going to talk about at least, just wanted to look at the implications for the LCA pathway in terms of the Green Star points that you can achieve using life cycle assessment. We'll look at an example project and the associated points calculation before and after the changes, and provision of, just wanted to really think about this a little bit more as well, because as LCA becomes more common, particularly through Green Star projects, we get some curly questions about results and in particular the trade-off between different environmental indicators. And I just really wanted to focus on that a little bit, talk about whether these environmental indicators are comparable in their characterised format, how you could potentially make them comparable using normalisation and weighting, which Green Star aren't conducting yet, and then how you can use that to avoid adverse outcomes. So I'll go through a little bit of a demo there as well. So the first thing I just wanted to talk about was the design and as built tool. So I'm just looking at how the previous credit ran. So there was effectively 6 points available for a comparative assessment, and another point available for additional life cycle impact reporting, all of which were achievable using eTool LCD. What we found with most building typologies, residential buildings, offices, etc., is that a lot of the points were gained in the operational energy space, and Green Star have now capped the points you can receive in the operational energy space at 3 out of the 6 points. However, there's some other points available, even if you're impacted by that cap. So there's the additional life cycle impact reporting, which was available under the previous credit, but also if you use life cycle assessment to improve your material selection, improve a construction process, you can get 1 point each for that, and another point for an LCA design review. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about how you can use eTool LCD to pick up these extra points, and talk about that. For anyone that's interested in eTool's response to the methodology that Green Star has chosen, please just ask me, and I can forward our response that we that's probably available actually through the GBCA website. I think the public responses to credit changes, etc., are all made available. But anyway, we're happy to provide that as well. So you can see what we sort of felt about this change. We think it's although there is this issue of that Green Star brought up of double counting, what we're now seeing, I guess, is a lack of accounting in the operational energy space to some extent for some of the other indicators, because the greenhouse gas reporting is only looking at greenhouse gas, and that would probably become pretty important for some alternative fuel sources. And I think the sooner we're able to move to using life cycle assessment as it was intended, and I think Green Star are calling this a super credit. I think that's definitely our preferred option at eTool. But I can provide our response if our detailed response if anyone's interested. So I just wanted to quickly, I'll run through the detail in a minute of how you can use eTool to pick up those extra points, but the story's pretty similar for the interiors tool. In the previous credit, you can get up to 18 points through the comparative assessment, and another point for additional life cycle reporting. If you're relying heavily on operational energy, which we also found to be the case in the normal case in the interiors projects that we worked on, then that's now capped at 12, the points you can get through the operational energy savings. And but there's these other areas, so same things, although this time it's 2 points for a material selection improvement, 2 points for a construction process improvement, and 2 points for an LCA design review. So I'll just talk about the comparative assessment with eTool LCD. So this has always been available in eTool, so no changes there, but we have implemented some features recently which make this a lot easier. So we have 2 new automated reports out of the software. So one's a lifecycle design feedback report, and the other one's a lifecycle assessment report. So you can use your lifecycle design feedback report early in the design process, and you can use the final, for your final submission, you can use the lifecycle assessment report. That lifecycle assessment report is an ISO compliant report, and it's also compliant with EN 15978. We have a new data set coming that's going to address the changes in the characterisation factors that Green Star have updated in this recent credit. So some of the indicators, the units have changed. So in the interim, we're happy to help while we're getting that data up and running. We're happy to help with the CIR to use the existing indicators. We haven't had any issues with the GBCA on that before. So, and I think, in fact, some of our indicators, some of our units don't actually align with the current credit, but that hasn't been an issue to date with the GBCA. So I might just show you this automated reporting quickly. So I'm going to jump into the software now. I created a couple of example designs for the webinar. So I've got a full office building and interiors. We might sort of delve into these in more detail after the formal part of the webinar is finished, if anybody's interested. But what I'm going to do is just show you a sort of typical workflow very, very quickly. So what we've done here is we've created a reference case building, which is our starting point for our workflow, I guess. I'm going to clone this now. And this might be during the design process. We can call this the improved design. And I'll just clone that into the same structure here. It's going to make an exact copy. And then from there, we can start simulating design improvements. So I've actually done this already. So this is, I sort of have a version that I've prepared earlier. So what I did in this one actually is I had the reference case, which is like business as usual, code compliant.
Hey, Rich.
Yeah.
We can't see. We can only see the presentation. We can't see the other screen.
Oh, okay. I'll just let me just start and stop that. How's that?
I can still just. I can see the PowerPoint. I can't see the E2 LCD.
Hold on. How's that?
Still the same. It's just the one screen. Have you got two screens up?
Oh, look, I've actually minimised the PowerPoint presentation, so it's not. I think it's frozen somehow. What I'm going to do is just make you the organiser, Dave, and then hopefully that sort of gets it going again.
We'll reset it.
Yep.
Yep.
So hold on. And I might just take control back now and see if I can get it running now.
Go for it.
Thanks also, Claire, for pointing that out. So screen 2, show my screen. How's that?
I can still only see the PowerPoint. How weird.
Okay. Any luck now?
Now I can see your desktop. I can't see the second screen. If you've got another screen, we can't see it. Maybe just open in that screen, open up your E2
Oh,
LCD.
it's yeah, it is. I don't know what's going on. So just let me bring it back up. So can you see the desktop of Haley lying on top of me? Is that on the beach? Or
Yep.
the other one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can see Haley laying on top of you. Everyone can see it now.
Yeah, of course. How about that?
No, how strange. I can still see the desktop.
It's just not registering Google Chrome for some reason. It's very weird.
How strange. Maybe flick to the other screen or something.
Yeah,
there you go. I can see your Firefox.
Okay, yeah. For some reason, it's not showing Google Chrome. I don't know why. Anyway, I'll just log on to this one. It's fine.
All right, all good now.
Sorry, everyone, for the technical difficulties.
At least you all got to see a good shot of Rich on the beach. That's all good.
Yeah. If I can remember my password, hold on. Okay, so sorry about that. So I had my reference case, which is the one I originally went into, and I've cloned it and I've called it the improved design, but I've actually got one of these that I effectively created earlier. And in fact, my original workflow for this was my reference case first, and then I did the base design, which is what the developer came to us with and said, oh, yeah, this is what we're thinking of building. We've got some strategies we're already sort of toying around with. So if I navigate into that and I go to the recommendations tab, you can see where I've recorded those strategies. So some building fabric, some solar PV, some LED lighting, etc. And then the next thing I did was I created a low impact design where I added a whole heap of other strategies as well for the developer's consideration. So that was really about trying to influence the design, which is fortunately what Green Star are doing with this credit. So it's kind of pretty well aligned with the way we normally use eTool here at eTool in our lifecycle design service. So I'll just jump into this low impact design now, and assuming that we've gone through this, and I will show you how to simulate a change in a moment, but I'll just show you the automated reporting. So we can choose the lifecycle design feedback report. So this is like an interim report that you do during the design process. We can select our reference case as the benchmark, and we'll choose the office building base design as our sort of starting point. So we always try and compare three designs when we're doing lifecycle design feedback. So we get an idea of how the base design, which is the sort of proposed design that the developer's thinking of doing, compares to a business as usual benchmark. And then as lifecycle designers, we're also trying to show them what else they could achieve if they considered some other strategies as well. So this report will generate, and it should be good to go. It should be good to present straight to your clients for consideration of those additional strategies. So let's wait for this to load up. So it gives you a bit of a performance summary at the start with your different indicators, your benchmark base design and your savings between your benchmark and your base design, and then your improved design and what the savings are of the improved design versus the base design. Here's the strategies that were in the base design, and you can kind of see which ones are the highest performing strategies just by looking at the heat map. And then we've got the design strategies for the improved design here. So a bunch of other strategies here. A bit of a summary of the performance of each design, the base design versus the benchmark, and the base design, or the improved design versus the base design. A little bit of info about the project and the scope of the assessment. And then each strategy that we're looking at, it gives you a full profile for all the indicators of whether it's an improvement or a degradation in performance. In this case, it's a big improvement on all indicators. But there are other strategies like this solar PV, which, although it's an improvement on most environmental indicators, there's actually an increase in impacts on some of the environmental indicators as well. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about how to interpret that later in the presentation, but I just wanted to demonstrate the use of this report. So the other report you can run is the life cycle assessment report. It's very similar, and I ran one of these last night when I was preparing for this. So I'll just download the PDF now and show you what that looks like. Effectively, providing you've got your designs certified in the software, you can run this report without the watermark. And as I said, it's good to go. It's good to be presented as in your final submission. So, and what you do, instead of selecting all three designs with this one, you probably just select your proposed design, which is your sort of final design that you've decided, or your as-built potentially, and your reference case design. So it's a similar looking report. There's some of the same things in this report, but it has a lot more of the, well, it covers off on the requirements of ISO 14044 with the specific chapters, etc. So this is not as friendly for a design team to read through this. It's more more of, I guess, an academic LCA report. It still has the pretty pictures, etc. in there, but they're buried in all the requirements of the ISO standards, etc. So we'll move on now, and hopefully PowerPoint doesn't take over my computer again. So let's see how we go. So additional life cycle impact reporting. I'm just going to, I think the other one might have stuffed up when I actually put the PowerPoint in presentation mode. So I'm just going to leave it like this. So once again, this should be easier now that we've got the automated reporting. We've got a new data set coming through with the updated indicator units, and we'll assist you in the meantime. So there shouldn't be any issues with this new credit achieving that additional point in both tools, both Green Star tools. With the material selection improvement, I'm going to do a little demo on how you would achieve this or how you would model this, but I just thought it was sort of worth putting this this was always our original sort of workflow in eTool. Well before Green Star started using LCA, we had this idea that what we want to be doing in eTool is calculating, comparing, improving, and certifying. And this idea of using a life cycle assessment process for improving the design was really always at the heart of what eTool wanted to do. So from that respect, we really commend the GBCA's approach here, because this is what life cycle assessment's about, is improving buildings. So we have this feature in eTool LCD called the recommendations feature. I think there might be a name change coming up there. We're probably going to call it strategies. But nevertheless, I'll show you how that works now. And what that allows you to do is build an audit trail of design strategies, so you can go back and see how they compare to each other with your different indicators, etc. And we saw that summary when we were looking at those strategies in the report, and we could see how each of the indicators was affected by each strategy. I'll show you how to actually drive that in the software now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my this was the this improved design that I've created here. This was the this at the moment is just a direct clone of the reference case. So I haven't implemented any strategies. So what I'm going to do, and I think I had an example here that I was going to run through. Floor finishes. Okay. So we're focusing on materials here, and what I might do actually is just go into what I would normally do to influence this or to understand where I should be directing my efforts is I'd probably run a report like the top impacts report to just understand what are the impacts that I could be focusing on. So you can see carpet comes in number 4 or 5 here. There's some other things that potentially I should be focusing on before carpet, but carpet's a pretty easy win in terms of mixing up the floor finishes. And so that's the one that I'm going to do a demo on now. So in my recommendations, I can create a new strategy or new recommendation. And what I'm going to do is reduce or replace 50% of carpet with polished concrete. Just to see what this will do to the performance. So it's a materials improvement strategy. I'll leave the factor of safety at 0. That's covered in our advanced training for anyone who's interested in on how that affects things. So I won't put a detailed description in there, but we normally do put a very detailed description in, and it includes all sorts of information for the developer, like why they should be motivated to do this, examples of other projects that have done it, the economic benefits, if there's an aesthetic benefit. You know, you really want to try and sell the idea to the developer so that they consider it, and as well as providing them with logistical constraints associated with this. So it might mean that there is some kind of acoustic ramification, which might mean you have to mix up your furniture a little bit or whatever to make sure it's still acoustically acceptable. You know, whatever the case, depending on the recommendations. So you can also add a construction specification in, which really details what you're looking for. So in this case, we could say polished, not acrylic finished floors. So for those that are in the know, there's a difference between polished concrete and then there's other floor finishes that look like polished concrete, but they're actually some kind of acrylic finish, which won't be as hard wearing in the long run. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to record this change in our design now. What the model will do, or what the software will do, is take a snapshot of my model. I can then go in here and find my carpet template.
Hey Rich, it's frozen again.
Okay.
It's all we can see is just your eTool LCD front screen. We can't see anything that you're typing, or if you look at you should be able to see what you can see on our screen up the top of the thing. It's just, I don't know what it's doing.
Yeah, I can't see that. I don't. Just let me stop presenting and start presenting again. See if it refreshes. Is that better?
I think it's still the same.
Okay.
We can just see you're on the low impact design screen of the eTool LCD.
Okay, I'm just going
see your
to
cursor.
just going to hand it back over to you, Dave, and then take it back.
Yep.
How's that?
No, I think it's the same.
Okay, just hold on.
I can just see that same screen.
How's that?
Yeah, now I can see your calendar. So try going back into it and see if that works.
Okay, just let me. Can you see Firefox now?
Yep.
Okay, no worries. I think I was actually working in Chrome, so that's probably why you didn't see it again. Sorry, everyone.
Oh, okay.
I'll just redo that.
Cool.
Okay. So you can see Firefox now?
Yep.
Great.
Yep, all good now.
Okay, so what I did was I cloned my reference case into what I'm calling the improved design here. I went to this recommendations tab in the design and I created a new recommendation, and I'll just show you what I typed in there. So we're looking at 50% replacement of carpet with polished concrete. So let me try and make this. And we can also enter in some information about why you would want to do this, and what the change is, some logistical constraints, and a construction specification. You obviously go into a lot more detail when you're doing this, and I'll show you some features that make that easier to replicate. But then we'll record the change to the model. So we'll go in and actually make this change in the model, and we'll build this audit trail of what that change actually means. So normally, I guess a lot of consultants that are using eTool at the moment, when they're modelling the differences between their reference case and their proposed case or whatever it might be, they're just making the changes but not actually documenting those changes in the tool. So we don't know what effect each change has. Using the recommendations tab to record those changes makes it much easier to go back and see which changes are influencing which indicators, etc. So I'm going to go and find my carpet template here. There we go. And I'm going to just go to the details here, and I can see we've got about 13,000 square metres of carpet. So I'm going to reduce that by 2. So apologies for my poor engineering brain here. I'm just going to grab my calculator and work out what that is. $6,668. So I'll save that. So that's now halved the amount of carpet in the building. And but I need to add the impacts associated, or the processes, etc., associated with the polished concrete. So I'm going to add a new template in here for polished concrete. And we need to effectively put the same amount of polished concrete in as carpet, because we said we're going to reduce the carpet by 50%. So I can now stop recording. I've made the changes associated with that template, or with that strategy, sorry. And save that. And if I now run a life cycle design feedback report, so obviously you do more strategies, you'd want to really try and optimize the building. So I'm just going to choose just a moment. I just need to set this up properly. So I'm just going to make my reference case the base design, because that's the one that I cloned. So to ensure this works properly. Okay, so back into my report. My cycle design feedback report. It looks good. So I then should see the detail of what that change did to the design, and I'll see if it was a positive impact over all indicators, or whether it was positive in some and negative in others. And that'll help the design team make a decision about which material strategies they want to implement. It's really going to help on the design review as well, that part of the credit. So if you generate this report early in the design and present it to the developer, and you can include that in your submission and say, this is how we made a decision on that indicator. So if we just jot down here so here it is here. So it's a small change in the scale of the building, but it's definitely positive for all the indicators that we're looking at here. So it looks like, from an environmental perspective, that strategy would be a great one to pursue. Not a lot of, no chance of a negative trade-off there, effectively. So I'll just go back to my PowerPoint preso now and get back on track. So that's how you can use eTool LCD to facilitate making a decision on design changes. The next thing I wanted to talk about was construction process improvements. So you can also use the same feature to document construction process improvements. So I'll just really quickly look at an example where we'll take a look at maybe locally sourced equipment. So again, if we run our life cycle design feedback report, our top impacts report, we'll get an idea of what the biggest construction processes are, and hopefully we'll also be able to see which ones have the biggest transport distance. So trade staff's actually number one, but here we have this excavator, which has a fair bit of transport. It's not huge, but it's reasonable. And there's some other ones. This is trade staff as well. But yeah, so it looks like the excavator is the biggest one. So what we'll do, we'll go back into our design, and we'll try and find a locally sourced excavator and update the transport distance from the default for the excavator. So we'll record a new change, or document a new change. So and these strategies I'm sort of doing here, they're not necessarily going to be applicable or beneficial to all projects. This is just a way of demonstrating. I think that's the beauty of LCA, is it's so, you can model these strategies, and depending on the building and the typology, the location, all these things, you're always going to know what a certain strategy is going to do in terms of performance improvement or degradation. So I've started recording this change now. I'm going to go to the bulk swap. I'll go to equipment. Hopefully I can use the bulk swap for this. Just let me see. Maybe not. So I'll go back into the design here, and I'll just have to do this manually. So I'll go into the equipment section. I'll find my excavator, hopefully. Here it is here. And I can change the town where the excavator is coming from. So this building's being built in, I think I've got it set to the middle of Sydney. So let's assume that we find an excavator in something like a nearby suburb like Erskineville or something. And hopefully that's led to a small drop in impacts. It's probably tiny, but we'll stop recording and have a look. So save that. So in the last one, I actually I ran the report to show it in all indicators. You can see the effect with each indicator by flicking through here. And you can see the effect after year 1, year 10, and the lifetime. So you can see again that this is a benefit to the project, that locally sourced excavator, just through reduced transport distance of the equipment to the site. So there's an example of how you can affect the construction process. There's many others. What I might show you actually now is just on that topic. So when you're adding a new strategy, we also have recommendation templates. So this is a library of ideas, if you like, of how you can influence the design. So if you filter this for materials, you'll get a list of possible materials ideas that you can implement. Yeah, that gives you a bit of an idea of how, well, if I select one of these, so let's go for something. Here's one, which is quite interesting, low impact refrigerant gases. I'll add that to the design. And what it does for me is it automatically documents some of these entry points here. So it just makes the process a bit easier. A lot of the strategies you'll reuse again on buildings more often than once, and you can actually, if you press template here when you've written a new strategy, it'll save it to your library, and you can draw on that strategy later on, and you don't have to redocument these things as well. So it can make this process of recording changes and documenting the changes to the design really easy. Before we move on to the next thing, I think I'm just going to have to run to the toilet. I'm really sorry. Dave, if you want to handle some questions while I'm gone, please do. Sorry, guys. Sorry, everyone. So I just wanted to talk about the LCA design review with E2. I think we've sort of gone through this a little bit, but there's with the lifecycle design feedback report, there's also an ability to actually influence the design even before you've got enough design detail to do a full LCA. eTool internally calls this the target setting service, and we've got a special report that can be generated based on this. So it's effectively the same process as an LCA, except you use pre-configured templates to really quickly model your design. So if I just jump into this building now, so and I'll show you what I mean. You can create a new design. Give it some attributes here. What's happened here? a bit of a so what we've got here is a blank design. I can update the attributes. I won't do that, but I'll just show you. There's probably our typical target setting model has maybe 3 templates. So I think in here we have an office library embodied template, and we'd put the floor area in for the design. So all you really need to do is know the brief in order to put this design together. And we might put neighbours 4-star energy template in there. So this is for Perth, but we'll soon add other templates in for other capital cities, etc. And I think the only thing it's missing is water use. So we've probably got a template for office water use. So let's just see. I think there's one in there somewhere. I'll just have to, oh, here we go, basic large office. So that gives us an LCA model, which is just really based on business as normal. You don't even know what necessarily the geometry is going to be. All you know is the floor area. And it's really inaccurate, but it enables you to start understanding straight away where the big impacts are likely to be. So straight away you can see in this situation, energy's pretty huge, and that's probably where the focus is. And then you've got a lot of recurring impacts as well. So that's probably your finishes and things like that, but you could delve in there and have a look. And you just go through the same process. You just start documenting your changes, recording those changes, and build up that audit trail. And we'll typically put 20, 25, 30, recommendations together when we're doing a target setting. Really try and push down towards a zero carbon outcome. And then we'll present that to the design team. And you can use that process to document. I think there's a requirement in the lifecycle design review to document some LCA feedback during the conceptual design phase. So the target setting, I think, is perfect for that. When you're doing the target setting, it also enables you to, if we go into the recommendations, we can add attendees in here as well. So we can actually put the design team, the members that were in the meeting when we were running through these ideas. You can actually document those attendees here, so that when you generate the target setting report, you can see who was in the meeting. So that's a feature that we implemented quite a while ago, but I think it could be quite useful for this new Green Star release. I just wanted to move on now. I know we've run out of time, so we might get some people dropping off. We will post this video. Sorry about the technical difficulties and the quick break there. But I just wanted to talk about, I guess, how you can provide meaningful design advice. So we need to be wary of unnormalized and unweighted indicator values. Those really shouldn't be compared with each other. And that's what Green Star are doing at the moment with the way they're summing up the savings for each indicator. But I'll just sort of run through a bit of an example about why that may not necessarily drive good decisions. So when we're looking at, we've got these different indicators and how do they compete? So we've got a design here which has got a saving in global warming, but an increase in UV, and a saving in acidification and eutrophication, but then it's got an increase in smog as well. So how would we know if that, is better or worse than than the original design. You know, it's up in some indicators and down in some, and it's not a case of just summing these up and seeing what the net result is. It's also about trying to understand how these things, how important these indicators are, or also, is this an increase on a very low base, you know, a big increase on a very, very low base, or is it a big increase on a very, very high base? You know, we need to try and understand that. So I'm just going to focus on global warming and ozone depletion, just to make this exercise simple. But if we think about that, what's worse and how do we prioritise effectively? As you know, it's not a case of which is worse. It depends on the magnitude. So understanding the magnitude of an impact is really important. So what we start with is what we call a characterised impact value, and that's what people are normally dealing with in Green Star. In the case of global warming, we're using kilograms of CO2, in this case per metre squared per year. Actually, I think that's not per year, that value there. And in the case of the ozone depletion, we use CFC 11 equivalent. Okay, so we're just using these. One's a global warming gas and one's an ozone depleting gas, but any emissions that affect ozone or global warming, we're calculating those in the equivalent of that gas. So that's a characterised figure. The next step to sort of to understanding how these things relate to each other is we use normalisation. So in Australia, I think the average global warming emission per person per year is just over 28 tonnes, so 28,000 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. So that means this building on a this must be per year actually, I think, per year basis is equivalent to 42 persons' annual emissions. So basically every year this building emits the same as 42 people in Australia do with their total emissions. So that's what normalisation is. It usually breaks things down to a per person or per annual emissions per person for each of those environmental indicators. In the case of CFC equivalent, so instead it's actually 7 persons' annual emissions. This value here, 14,200, because the factor's about 2,000 kilograms of CFC equivalent. So it's actually 7 persons' annual emissions. So, but that's not the whole. That's not where we stop. So, because the other thing is weighting. So normalisation is fine, but there are some indicators which aren't as critical as other indicators. So we look at global warming, for example. Global warming is still accelerating. There's no global agreement yet to stabilise the climate, and emissions are actually increasing. Okay, ozone depletion, on the other hand, depletion is decelerating. In fact, I think the size of the ozone hole peaked in 2006. There is a global agreement in place to reduce ozone depleting gases, and we've actually already reduced production of ozone depleting gases by 99%. So the problem of ozone depletion is a lot less prescient than the problem of global warming at the moment. And so what that means is when we look at ISCA, Infrastructure Sustainability Council of Australia, they've put a weighting factor on global warming of 47% and a weighting factor on ozone depletion of 10%. So we then apply that weighting factor to our normalised value, and in ISCA speak, we come up with 20 enviro points for global warming and 0.71 enviro points for ozone depletion. So bigger enviro points are worse. So global warming's quite a lot worse. So we're looking at total of nearly 21 enviro points for the building, but it's totally dominated by global warming. So global warming is nearly 30 times worse in this case when we normalise and weight than ODP in our base building. So then we think about, okay, we apply a strategy to this building and it leads to a 40% decrease in our global warming, but it's a 500% increase in ODP. You know, should we pursue that strategy? Well, let's have a look when we normalise and weight. So the 40% decrease in global warming ends up being 12 enviro points when we normalise and weight it, and the 500% increase in ozone depletion is 3.55 enviro points. So we end up with a 15. So a big reduction in points for the global warming, a smaller increase in the enviro points for ozone depletion, remembering that more points is bad, if that makes sense. But we're still at 15.56 enviro points, which is quite a lot less, a 25% net reduction than our base building. So it would appear that this strategy, a 40% increase in GWP for the building, is still worth pursuing, even though there's a 500% increase in ODP. So that's how you can apply normalisation and weighting to give some. Now that's an extreme example. I've never seen anything like a 500% increase in ODP, but it does. And the reason why I used the extreme example was to try and sort of show you that small increases in ODP, particularly when you start normalising and weighting, are probably acceptable, you know, when you normalise and weight. So, and it's a pretty, you know, the normalisation weighting is an accepted step in the ISO standards for life cycle assessment. In some cases, it's encouraged when you're trying to make informed decisions and not, you know, you want to avoid adverse outcomes. And it's reasonably robust from that perspective. Obviously, we have value decisions or value judgments, personal value judgments. Personally, I'm very focused on climate change, mitigating climate change, but other people might have different values, and there's nothing stopping you from applying those values to your life cycle assessment. So if for some reason ozone depletion is very, very important to you personally, then you could still, you know, choose not to pursue this strategy, even though the normalisation and weighting is indicating that it would, you know, still be worthwhile. So I just wanted to sort of run through that because I think it's quite important that we understand that the way the GBCA are treating all indicated or characterised indicators equally at the moment in terms of the savings against the base design. It's not necessarily a holistic way of making design decisions, and in fact, it could actually lead to adverse outcomes by forgoing, you know, a design strategy just because one indicator shows a small increase. So, yeah, really sorry about the technical difficulties. I think there's a few questions come through here which I couldn't see because I had to drop down to one screen. Just let me have a look. I've got a question from Rebecca. Have you used the Green Star design and as-built LCA? Oh, did you already answer these, Dave?
Yeah, Gabby helped answer that one.
Okay.
We do have a question. We've got a question from Max. Just, are we able to send through a copy of the slides? That should be fine.
Yeah, that should be fine. Yep.
Any other questions? You guys, if you want to unmute, you can ask any questions, or you can ask on the question screen if you have any questions. I'll also just chuck in mine and our email addresses so you guys can see them if you want to send us an email. But yeah, go ahead and ask any questions. I'll just mute myself again. Yeah,
really sorry about the technical difficulties, guys. It was a bit stunted, the prezzo. If I'm just looking at No worries. If there's no questions, thanks for joining, everyone, and hope that we can help you with your next Green Star project, regardless of the version of the tool that you're using. I guess the only thing to really press home there is really important to start using your life cycle assessment models early in the design process in order to get the design review credit.
There's a couple more questions there, Rich, but we can answer those via email if you want, or you can answer them now. There's
I can do it now.
A few coming through. Yep.
Data issue and compatibility of EN 15804. Not sure which data for material used in the tool, and also can user easily convert the results based on EN 15804 stage ABC. Yes, in those automated reports, I'll just bring this one up that we prepared. So there is it's EN 15978, which is the building level equivalent of 15804. Requests results in this format here, and that's where you're talking about your different stages. So you have A, B, C, D, etc. So that's not an issue. In terms of the background data we're just about to implement a range of data sets for different locations, and they'll be based on EcoInvent 3.3, I think. Tim Grant helps us compile the data. He's a respected LCA practitioner here in Australia. And we use, for the Australian data set, which is the main one we use for the Green Star purposes, that's the Australasian LCI data, which is mainly Oz LCI, but it has an EcoInvent background data set as well to fill the gaps. Got a question from Rebecca. So standard Portland cement in concrete as benchmarked in the life cycle impacts concrete credit. Do the current templates incorporate this? Yeah, I think our standard templates normally for concrete are Portland cement concrete. So you can then record a change to move to a blast furnace or fly ash mix with your concrete. So that's pretty easy to facilitate in the tool. Rebecca, just get in touch if you want to actually run through that in some detail. Okay. Another question from Rebecca. So EPDs submitted in response to the sustainable product credit also need to be in the LCA. Are we able to add these to eTool? You certainly can. There's EPD functionality in eTool. I'll just show you that. So in the library, there's an EPD section here. And you can add new EPDs. So there's a bunch that have already been added by people, but you can add additional EPDs. One thing to be wary of is it'll be quite difficult to find EPDs that have all life cycle phases and all indicators, particularly those indicators that are required for Green Star. So that's something that we'll have to work through, but let's cross that bridge when we come to it. It might require a CIR to fill the gaps with existing data or something, yeah, which is probably okay in lieu of anything better. But yeah, definitely we have EPD functionality in eTool, and it's used by people fairly regularly.
Just quickly, guys, before everyone goes, I'm just going to put the link to our next training session in the little chat bar down the bottom there. We've got a training session in 2 weeks, if anyone wants to join us for that. So if you're a consultant subscriber, that training is free. It is done by Rich, and it goes over 2 days for 4 hours each day on the Thursday and the Friday. So yeah, anyone who's in this webinar that hasn't done the training and would like to, 2 weeks time is the next one. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Probably leave it there, and but yeah, just reach out if you've got any questions. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.